Let's talk to the man who knows a thing or two about that. Jamie Jenkins, independent statistician, of course, on the news, Jamie. Welcome to the show. Very good morning to you. Inflation risen to 3.8% in July. As you say, more bad news for the economy.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. Some good news on the Bell Hotel, but bad news another week for the economy. So, yeah, inflation's been creeping up now for a few months. And what's driving this, Mike, is it's pretty much food inflation. It's continuing to go up. So that's it, 4.9%. And this is not the direction that we want things to be going. And what we've seen, Mike, they were talking last week, Rachel Reeves, about the economy and comparing ourselves to some of the other nations. So let's do that with the inflation figures. France, 0.9%. Germany, 1.8%. So two of the big powerhouses of Europe, they're below that Bank of England target. So the government needs to look now, what are they doing wrong because inflation's so high?
Yeah, because they keep also lying to us as well, don't they? It's even as recently as last week, saying that we're the fastest growing economy in the G7. Not true. It was true in the first quarter, but it's not true now.
No, and the economy's in a hell of a state, Mike. And then I've been looking at the figures that came out last week. There's so many numbers that come up from the ONS every week that difficult to get through them all. So you look at the wage figures, which kind of feeds a little bit into inflation, because obviously if wages are going up above inflation, that can push inflation up again. You get into this wage cost spiral.
Yeah.
And if you look at the latest public sector pay, Mike, which is obviously important to the story you've been talking about government debt as well this morning, public sector pay now is outstripping private sector pay in the economy. So if we look at the latest figures, public sector pays up about 5.3%. The private sector pays up 4.7%. So that's year on year. So what does that mean? So this is a remarkable number. This is the whole public sector pay bill, roughly now, Mike, about £288 billion. Huge, £288 billion on the public sector pay bill. So that 5.3% increase would be about 15.3 billion. But the important number to consider is that difference between what public sector pay is going up and private sector pay, which is about 0.6%. Put that in context, £1.7 billion. So the government has to borrow more money, because obviously we're not getting enough tax in anyway to pay for that.
Right.
And that 1.7 billion, Mike, the house of cards is falling. That's more than what they were hoping to get back by getting rid of the winter fuel allowance. It's 3 times more than what they'd expect to get annually from the farming tax.
Right.
So the government's decisions, Mike, are causing more of this debt that's costing the government more debt. The economy is out of control, and Rachel Reeves surely just should resign.
Well, you would think so. I mean, any normal person would, because that's the other lie that they come out with all the time, that, they pushed up pay for people, that people are being paid more money. Well, only if they're in the public sector, right?
Yeah, and private sector pay, Mike, has been coming down, say, over the last 6 months in terms of the annual rise. So obviously wages still go up, but the amount they go up is coming down. And that's because inflation has been coming down. So the bad news on inflation could cost companies more money, because you'd have union bosses going in asking for more money because inflation's creeping up. And that's where the economy starts to out of control. So the private sector are responding to the falls we had seen in inflation from those peaks of around 10%. But the public sector not, because Labour came in, they caved in, they gave these pay deals. And even, the resident doctors aren't happy with what they got. You can't get public sector pay under control. Remember, Mike, who pays for the public sector pay bill? It's the private sector tax.
Yeah,
so if you don't get the money in, that's not going to work.
But that is the problem, isn't it? We've got more and more people who are not contributing to the economy. We know now that there's millions of people who are just basically economically inactive, and fewer people like us actually paying for it.
Yeah, and the figures on jobs last week, exactly what you said there, Mike. So we've seen 157,000 fall in payroll jobs. So, those are people who are paying tax into the system in the last kind of year since Labour came in. But break that down, public-private sector. We've seen a kind of over 70,000 increase in health jobs, public sector, over 29,000 in education, public sector, an increase in public administration, public sector. Look at the private sector, hospitality's down over 100,000, retail's down close to 70,000. So private sector's falling, public sector's going up, which costs more and more money, costs more and more borrowing. And this is just a debt that we cannot afford, Mike. And you've just been talking, I think, with Theo this morning about the £20 billion we're borrowing a month. We cannot sustain this into the long term.
No, it's absolutely shocking. Good to talk to you, Jamie. Thanks very much indeed. Jamie Jenkins, independent statistician there, telling us about inflation, which has risen to 3.8% in July. A much higher level, by the way, than other countries in Europe. We don't hear that boast from the government, do we? All we hear from them is that, we're the fastest growing nation economy in the G7. Not anymore. and inflation much higher than it is in other G7 countries. And of course, the problem is the borrowing levels are out of control, now hitting the highest levels in 27 years. And if you thought Liz Truss was bad, 5.1% was the 30-year UK gilt yield under Liz Truss's tutelage. Now it's 5.6% under Rachel Reeves, who now wants to bring in yet another tax on your housing, on your property. Absolutely unbelievable.